I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest.
Joe Biden!
It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
This is, again, an attempt by Donald Trump to distract from the real issues of this campaign.
I'm going to punch him out, and I'm going to go to jail, and I'm going to be happy.
It comes from China. That's why. It comes from China.
You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Once again, I'd like to wish a wholehearted thank you to all of those who've taken time out of your day to give me a listen. So welcome once again to Divided We Fall, where we will not be politically correct, we will not be woke, and no one is safe from being called out for hypocrisy. We want to start this episode by acknowledging the passing of California Senator Dianne Feinstein. While she was the object of some criticism in episode 1, we do push unity on this podcast. And as such, our thoughts and prayers go out to her family, and we hope they find comfort during this, their time of loss. This is episode 3, Cancel Culture. Divided We Fall will always be brought to you by AR Tactical LLC, Houston's finest concierge firearms company. They bring FFL transfers, LTC classes, and firearms proficiency training to you at your home, office, church, or wherever you're most comfortable. So go find them on Facebook and give them a like at AR Tactical LLC, or call 346-465-5994 to discover how they can cater a class to your needs today. I want you to close your eyes for a minute and let your mind drift back to elementary school. Maybe it was the day before vacation. Maybe it was the day after some overreaching Department of Education's standardized testing. Either way, it was a slow day and you were playing games in class. Maybe you were even playing Heads Up 7-Up. You remember that one, where everybody put their heads down on the desk, put their thumbs up. Then 7 choosers go around and each touch one person who has to put their thumb down. And then once all the choosers have chosen, those 7 chosen have to stand up and try to guess who chose them. If they guess right, they get switch spots and become the chooser. You remember this. Now imagine if you really, really wanted to be chosen by the boy or girl you had your first puppy crush on, but they didn't choose you. Devastated, you go to the teacher and demand that this once object of your desire, now archenemy, be permanently banned from ever playing games again. Seems a little extreme, doesn't it? Now what if it happened again during Red Rover and once again little Timmy or little Missy didn't choose you? So this time you wrangle together all your friends, you march on the teacher's lounge, and inform the teacher that you and your half-pint army are going to go full-on revolt if your demands for the sawed-off Stalin to be removed from game time aren't met. Sounds downright silly, doesn't it? Like something that could never possibly happen outside of a Judy Blume novel, right? Well, there's grown-ups filling this country right now who think and act just in the manner I've described, and the movement has come to be known cancel culture. What once used to be considered exercising your First Amendment right can now land you in an unemployed purgatory. Hollywood has become one of the worst perpetrators of this behavior. Actors who were welcomed into the Hollywood fold with open arms suddenly find themselves shunned, not because of poor performance, not because of bad breath during a kissing scene, and certainly not due to inability of any kind to contribute. Simply because they spoke their minds in favor of something that Hollywood is against. This almost always means speaking against some liberal talking point. Simply saying something they don't agree with can get you blackmailed by an entire industry. Gina Carano, one of the UFC's best at one point, as popular a female fighter as the UFC had at that time, she decided to make the switch to the silver screen, and while her acting in Fast and Furious 6 was a little far from perfect, she redeemed herself, she came back and did a little better in Deadpool, and then was pretty darn good in The Mandalorian. Not a single person in Hollywood had any issue with Carano until she started sharing tweets, and one tweet in particular, hyperbolic and in poor taste. Ironically, its content was basically that in Hollywood you were shunned if you had a different political opinion than the mainstream. So she was canceled for calling out cancel culture. Immediately, Lucasfilm canned her from The Mandalorian, putting out a statement saying her social media posts denigrating people based on their cultural and religious identities are abhorrent and unacceptable.
As reported by Deadline, a spokesperson for Lucasfilm confirmed on Wednesday evening that Carano wasn't just dropped from the first ever live-action Star Wars series, she's also no longer going to be considered for or offered employment with Lucasfilm in the future. The decision came after Carano continued to share on social media statements that Lucasfilm deemed, quote, abhorrent.
So what was this horribly denigrating tweet she had the audacity not to write, mind you, but just to share? It said, Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. The post, which again was written by someone else, went on to say, because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that different from hating someone for their political views? Now, how ironic is that? For sharing a tweet that basically said that Jews, while being targeted by the Nazis, were turned on by their own neighbors who'd been brainwashed. In turn, Gina Carano was turned on by her fellow actors who'd been brainwashed. They were brainwashed that the liberal way is the only correct way, and anyone with a differing opinion should be shunned. Rounded up and sent in trains to concentration camps? Well, of course not. That's the hyperbole I mentioned. But the shunning was still there. After she was dropped by Lucasfilm, Disney followed suit. Then even her own publicist joined in on the action and dumped her. Speak your mind against the mainstream, get canceled. J.K. Rowling, the wildly successful author responsible for the popular Harry Potter series of books, which became blockbuster movies, was even susceptible to cancel culture. In 2020, she lit the cancel culture pitchforks with an essay in which she disagreed with the mainstream, saying sex is real, and criticized people for replacing the term woman with people who menstruate. The newer phrase is used by the mainstream to tell the difference between a biological woman and a trans woman. Well, immediately she was labeled as bigoted, transphobic, and legions of loyal Harry Potter fans vowed to never read her books again. Even the three actors made famous by the movies her novels created, Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson, openly criticized her comments.
The Museum of Pop Culture in Washington has now removed J.K. Rowling from its Hall of Fame and Harry Potter exhibition, with the project manager saying there's a certain cold, heartless, joy-sucking entity in the world of Harry Potter, and this time it is not actually a Dementor. I mean, can you believe this, Kosha? These people are nuts. She is the creator of this world, and she's been removed from it.
Speak your mind against the mainstream and get canceled. Roseanne Barr, comedian and creator of one of the most successful sitcoms in American television. Once the sweetheart of Middle America, the American people and TV execs alike celebrated the return of the Roseanne Barr Show. However, just a few short months later, Roseanne, who had recently come out as a supporter of then-President Trump, tweeted a negative message about senior Obama advisor Valerie Jarrett, saying she looked like she was from Planet of the Apes. Of course, since Jarrett is a black American, the tweet was immediately labeled racist. Never mind the fact that the woman actually has the facial structure of one of the cartoonish-like apes from the 1970s movie. The crazy popular Roseanne Barr Show was instantly put on hold. Barr was fired, and the show attempted, but failed miserably, to go on without her. Blacklisted, Barr has since seen no success in television or movies, her career seemingly over.
With that single inflammatory tweet, Roseanne's rising star imploded today. Within hours, the highly anticipated return of one of TV's most beloved shows, Roseanne, canceled, and Roseanne Barr effectively banished from Hollywood for this racist tweet.
Speak your mind against the mainstream, get canceled. Maybe one of my favorites came to a head during the Christmas season of 2020. Baby It's Cold Outside, a Christmas classic since 1944, which had caused a little stir in both 2018 and 2019 for what the mainstream suddenly called a rapey vibe, quote unquote, became the target of full-on cancellation, as people around the country started to threaten radio stations with full-on revolt if they didn't pull the classic from their playlists. This song.
You know, on second thought,
Yes?
I really can't stay.
Baby, it's cold outside.
I've got to go away.
Baby, it's cold outside.
This evening has been
Hoping that you drop
so
in.
very nice.
I'll hold your hands. They're just like
My
ice.
mother will start to worry.
Beautiful, what's your
My
hurry?
father will be pacing the floor.
Listen to the fireplace
So
roar.
really, I'd better scurry.
Beautiful, please don't
Well,
hurry.
maybe just a half a drink more.
Put some records on while I
The
fall.
neighbors might
But
think.
baby, it's bad out there.
Was suddenly in the crosshairs of the cancel mob. Meanwhile, mind you, the number one song in the country, well, I'll just let the lyrics speak for themselves.
Yeah, you fucking with some wet-ass pussy. Bring a bucket and a mop for this wet-ass pussy. Give me everything you got for this wet-ass pussy. Beat it up, catch a charge, extra large and extra hard. Put this pussy right in your face.
The one and only Gilbert Gottfried, ladies and gentlemen, doing probably my favorite cover of that particular song. That's right, folks. The number one song in the United States, while Baby It's Cold Outside was being persecuted, was Wet Ass Pussy by Cardi B. Now, most of the population doesn't actually believe that Carano, Rowling, or Barr deserved the treatment they received. And the Baby It's Cold Outside thing, well, I'm pretty sure we've already shown that it wasn't actually the delicate sensibilities of our nation that were disturbed. Gilbert proved that one wrong. But it doesn't stop at Hollywood. Remember when they came after Dr. Seuss?
Do you like green eggs and ham? I do not like them, Sam, I am.
Between those catchy rhymes and whimsical drawings on the pages of some Dr. Seuss books are hurtful racial stereotypes, like this one of a Chinese man in the book, and to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street, one of 6 by the late author that will no longer be published.
Or how about when they invaded our breakfast table and went after one of the most beloved icons in morning food?
Pancakes and syrup. That's what Aunt Jemima sold for over 130 years. Until today. Quaker announcing it is scrapping the brand. In a statement saying, we recognize Aunt Jemima's origins are based on a racial stereotype.
It seemed like nothing was sacred anymore, and all of a sudden, everything was under attack. But corporate brands aside for a second, most of us understand that human nature lends itself to goofs, to gaffes, to misspeaks. Granted, probably not as many as our current president manages to fit into one speech these days, but we're all human. And I truly believe in my heart that the vast majority of this country understands that too. So, if the vast majority understand that, then where did this cancel culture come from? Same place it always does, folks. Our government and their cohorts in the media. A falsely whipped up storm of justice to right the wrongs of First Amendment protected speech. That's right. The First Amendment specifically protects our ability to speak our mind, even if what we say offends or is disagreed upon by others. Now, you'll often hear politicians spout off about how certain rights protected by our Bill of Rights are not absolute. You can't yell fire in a theater, being the example they love to use. And I agree with that point. Cancel culture, however, doesn't care about the First Amendment. They go after a person's very livelihood simply because they disagree with what they said. And have you noticed that culture, that cancel culture, only directs one way? When was the last time you heard about someone on the left side of the aisle suffering the same fate as Barr, Carano, or Rowling? In 2019, Virginia Republican Senator Ralph Normant was absolutely annihilated by his co-workers and constituents when it came to light that 51, yes, 51, that's 51 years ago, in 1968, the Republican Virginia Senate Majority Leader was the publisher of his school's yearbook. Now, unfortunately for Normant, in this yearbook, there was some evidence of students in blackface, and there was a few instances of slurs against races. Not that the man himself was in blackface, not even that he used the slurs in question. No, he was simply the editor of the yearbook that contained instances of other people committing both of these heinous crimes. And yet, here came the cancelists. Now, never mind the fact that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, late-night hosts Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon, even the left's darling Tom Hanks, have all been photographed or even filmed in blackface. And while it may have garnered, a little bit of attention and typically a boilerplate apology, citing how insensitive it was and blah, 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 there was no outrage. There were no threats of cancellation, no boycotts, no marches, no riots. And if you ever wanted an example of someone who should be canceled for racism, our dunderhead-in-chief is a prime example.
You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent.
We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
Unchain Wall Street. They're going to put you all back in chains.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Geez, the reason I was able to stay sequestered in my home is because some black woman was able to stack the grocery shelf.
And two of the great artists of our time representing the groundbreaking legacy of hip-hop in America, LL Cool J. By the way, that man's got biceps bigger than my thighs. I think he's spent.
Boy? Can you imagine the absolute chaos that would ensue if Trump called LL Cool J boy? Think about it for a second. It would be plastered on every newscast, every social media feed, every tweet for days. But Biden does it, and it barely garners any attention at all. And I'm not saying that I want anyone canceled, because first, I believe wholeheartedly in the First Amendment's protection of our God-given right to say whatever our little hearts desire. And second, because of that belief, I don't want to see anyone canceled. Nobody on this earth is more like nails on a chalkboard to my ears than those 4 cud-chewing bovines on the The View every morning. I disagree with probably 110% of what they say. But I believe in their right to say it. I believe in the men and women who have sacrificed their time, their limbs, or even their lives in battle to protect the right of those heifers to spew hateful crap from their pie holes every day. And I also believe in the rights of those Americans who choose to watch that dumpster fire. You see, part of that First Amendment right is choice. Just because you disagree with someone on TV doesn't mean they need to be canceled. You have the right to change the channel. If you disagree with the political stance of an actor, they don't have to be canceled. You have the right to just not go watch their movie. And I believe in my right to change the radio station anytime WAP comes on and switch over to Gilbert Gottfried's version again, instead of, calling for Cardi B's cancellation. But do you think the left feels the same? Do you think that a Democrat would stand up for my right to call Joe Biden a dunderhead? Seems kind of one-sided, doesn't it? That's not by chance. See, traditionally, it's those of us on the conservative side of the aisle that focus more on the absolute rights granted to each of us by our Creator and protected by our Bill of Rights. It's those of us on the right who are more prone to lash out at any attempt to erode those rights. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all. It is kind of stereotyping people by their political affiliations, but it doesn't mean it's not true. If our government and those who control our government condition us to be afraid of speaking up against the infringement of rights for fear of being canceled, and if they encourage the left to cancel us anytime we speak up, then they just further that conditioning, and they can go on eroding those rights, piece by piece, little by little, taking away our freedoms, typically by hiding them in legislation in the middle of a 2,000-page bill they pass under different names and causes. But that's a different episode. If my friends on the left side of the aisle are hollering BS right now, be honest with yourself. Tell us all the last time you saw cancel culture go after someone on your side. Looking back through history, it was the Democratic Party who created the KKK. It was the Democratic Party who were anti-abolition. It was the Democratic Party who fought against the 15th Amendment to give black Americans the right to vote. You're telling me that doesn't deserve the wrath of the cancel crowd? We've established through the Ralph Norman story that racism doesn't have a statute of limitations. Regardless of which side you're on, you have to see that once again I'm correctly identifying another way they keep us whipped up into a frenzy against each other once again. Another form of division, another form of control. Keeping our anger focused on each other and not on the overreaching behavior of our own government and those who control it. Because once again, my friends, they can't have us united. United, we can accomplish anything. We can even affect change in our government. We can even, through voting and advocacy, keep them confined within the constrictions imposed by our Constitution. We can force them to stay within the powers granted them by the Constitution. If only we can get past these distractions and unite. But not if we're divided. Because as the title says, divided we fall. Thank you so much, friends, for once again tuning in to another episode of Divided We Fall. Please make sure that you share this with your friends. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that like button. But share. Get the word out. Let's see if we can unite this country.